I'm going to read a bit from the opening to Maintenance Art, which was published earlier this year by Sublunary Editions. Maintenance is a drag. It takes all the fucking time, literally. The mind boggles and chafes at the boredom. The culture confers lousy status on maintenance jobs, minimum wages, housewives, no pay. Clean your desk, wash the dishes, clean the floor, wash your clothes, wash your toes, change the baby's diaper, finish the report, correct the typos, mend the fence, keep the customer happy, throw out the stinking garbage, watch out, don't put things in your nose, what shall I wear? I have no socks, pay your bills, don't litter, save string, wash your hair, clean the sheets, go to the store, I'm out of perfume. Say it again. He doesn't understand. Seal it again. It leaks. Go to work. This art is dusty. Clear the table. Call him again. Flush the toilet. Stay young. Mirla Lauderman Ukalis. He was the most famous painter on earth that week. My Edmund had his showing in the city, and everybody piled in for a talk he gave in the lobby before patrons would be freed to walk throughout the entire place, which, in turn, had been curated and put into its disorder by my Edmund. He'd spent the past 6 months working every day within there, and I'd spent the entire time filming him while our kids were at school and returning home when they returned in our place near the lake in Geneva. Back and forth, that's how it went as he drank pot after pot of coffee and spent week after week fixating on where within the Art Institute he might hang Magritte's Banquet. The series of paintings that were his own were done over that 6 months in this weird sort of dungeon room deep within the bowels of the Art Institute. After spending the morning looking through their archives or taking walks around the space, he'd return to that room, alone with me, where my Edmund would drink a full pot of coffee and light a cigar or start a pack of cigarettes to last the duration of his work on these large circular canvases he'd put together there in that room during the first weeks of this project. I took footage of him on the ground in his white jumpsuit, holding a cinder block at the top of the painting and masturbating into the center of the canvas, which he'd filled with thick globs of red he'd found in his second or third walk throughout the place. The agreement gave him time and the freedom to incorporate any elements not made by other artists or historical figures into his work for the 2-year exhibition which would result. The Art Institute, whenever this was, 70, 75, hadn't made any waves for some time, and my Edmund's standing within the world was sufficient to give this its needed longevity. So he'd gone throughout the place grabbing free pens, touch-up paints, canvas materials for mending, even eventually the contents of their gift shop, which had been entirely co-opted into the centerpiece of the entire exhibition, a room empty but for 2 staircases encircling this massive globe of appropriated material so densely packed it looked like a gleaming planet of trash. He'd use glues and epoxies to slowly congeal the destroyed materials inward until they took on shades of brown and black, and their former state, being stuffed animals or shirts or books or tote bags, was now impossible to know. I took footage of my Edmund with our children, a large Andy Warhol painting used as material either within or upon the cover, I've never read it, of my Edmund's favorite book, and my Edmund and our children skipping around the fringes of it when my Edmund falls and the children pile onto his stomach and his right shoulder's on the work. I took footage of their frantic scrambling off the piece as someone from the office checked in to get our lunch orders. In the morning I would get up close to 6 and he would be gone, my Edmund. I would go downstairs and make coffee and sit there reading from Musil before our children got up, and sometimes I'd go out and walk along the lake with an e-cigarette I'd usually keep around. When I was younger we smoked, my Edmund and I, as most everybody did where we lived in New York. I met him during his MFA when he'd shown pictures he took with a device that floated up close enough to the International Space Station and documented waste disposal just outside of our atmosphere. He'd gone to school first for computer science and had organized an effort to publicize all online university materials where Aaron Swartz left off however long ago. In the panic that resulted, we moved to France, but my Edmund put together a plan that would make these documents into a massive online artwork, and the publicity tour for this slowly dissipated any potential legal ramifications from organizations like JSTOR, and the fallout vanished entirely when he gave much of the proceeds to an endeavor that would give these resources to underprivileged and imprisoned people. This process, from illegality to subterfuge to eventual artwork, has carried my Edmund since then. In his MFA, he was already a sort of notorious figure then, but he devoted himself entirely to reading as much theory as he could find and making as much work as he could for every single opportunity. It felt a bit like closing the door after the horse had bolted, but he always said he needed those years of school to figure out how he'd continue this process. And although he violently disagreed with every single person in his path in that place, it helped him to feel grounded after the banal notoriety of his scandal. After I walked a bit and came home and drank some cups of coffee with Splenda and our children woke up, I went through the return of readying them for the bus. And then I took the metro into the city, editing the footage of my Edmund on my computer until I came into downtown Chicago and a city rich with filth and enterprise. I'd inevitably stumble into a situation wherein my Edmund was in a tirade against the powers within the Art Institute, and I'd calm him down, and I'd calm them down, and I would start to film. I took footage of him walking through a collection of photographs so impossibly dense it looked like walking through a bombed-out library in some massive European city. My Edmund refused to be bound by much in the way of order or description. He would construct these small piles of artwork in rooms and leave notes on top ordering their distribution throughout the place. The setup he'd conceived for the photographs... Sorry, that's my dog barking. Lila, quiet. The setup he'd conceived for the photographs is probably still the most dizzying artwork I've ever witnessed. He got these panel lights in a room with a mixture of matte black and clear walls and lined all of these until it felt impossible to see in front of you. Then he did the same on the floor and ceiling, covering the floor where patrons would walk with plexiglass panels after lining the entire floor with these associated stacks of photographs. He did the same then on the walls and the same then on the ceiling, so that on entering you felt as if you were walking through 1,000 different films being simultaneously projected on your body, and stepping and looking in one direction, you might see a wounded child from Vietnam, or an archaeological dig in Greece, or an artist's mother sitting on a simple chair, or an ancient Mexican civilization dotted throughout the place in clusters of discolored matter. When I was little, my father and I read from F. Scott Fitzgerald's letters with his daughter. We went to a store in Chicago, I can't remember where. I'd read The Great Gatsby in school, and he'd talked to me about it, my father. He read to me the section I found underlined in perfect thin lines later on in the novel. I can't remember it now. Something about the snow. Or it's possible that was Joyce. We read Joyce together, some of it, before he died. I read him The Dead one cold winter when he was hospitalized, his hair falling out and his stomach riddled with tumors. My mother could hardly stand to visit him. I would visit him and read from books I thought he'd like. Before, though, we read these letters. These letters from a father to his daughter. These letters from a miserable man enduring a miserable life to the light of it all, his daughter. This scrawny, flawed being, trapped in his life beneath the barrels of drink. We'd read about their days. We read about Zelda. We read about violence and dogs and hope and happiness and seeing films. This big green book of their letters. This big, beautiful big green book of their letters. A piece of furniture in itself. When my Edmund had started the process of shredding and cutting and burning the items from the gift shop, I made sure to throw a page from their letters into the mess of it all. I've done this with all of my Edmund's works, and I haven't ever told him. Thank you.